basic way of looking at it. And of course, there's things like bounce rates and all kinds of caveats you can put in. But a lot of the Google quality score comes from, are you clicking on the ad?
Got it. And what's the distinction between click-through rate and relevance?
Well, relevance, as it appears in the pie chart, would include how relevant the keyword is to the ad text, and how relevant the keyword is to the landing page. And in some cases, there's also relevance, how relevant the keyword that was typed in is to the keyword that triggered the ad in the case of a broad match, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Okay.
So all those things figure in too. And there's even, we can go further and talk a little bit about click-through rate, because there's a quality score that's sort of monitored, or historical data that's kept for individual keywords, but then there's also historical data that's kept on keyword and ad pairings, if that makes sense. And that can be sometimes misconstrued as being like an ad group level quality score, but really it's data that's being kept in terms of a pairing of an individual ad and a keyword. And then there's historical data also kept on your display URLs. And then lastly, there's overall account data that's kept as well.
So that's why if you introduce a new ad to a group where your keywords already have high-level quality score, you're temporarily making yourself vulnerable, aren't you? If that new ad doesn't have the relevance and it doesn't have the historical data built up on click-through for the ad pairing with the keyword.
Right, because you're still going to be benefiting from the historical data that says your keyword tends to have a good click-through rate, but you're going to be neutral on the keyword and ad pairing, data.
So how does this impact the best practices for split testing then?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, our best practice is always to rotate ads, not to set Google in terms of ad serving to optimize. And that becomes particularly important when you're down the path of split testing and you've already found, as we like to say, your forest and your tree, and you're at the branch or leaf level and you're getting more granular in your testing. You have a lot of history built up and you're doing quite well with your keyword. If you were to set your ad to do optimize instead of rotate, you probably would get very few servings of the new ad, because the strong ad would
I see.
Yeah, that history would really get you in terms of, it would take a long time before you get the statistical significance.
But what it would say to me, though, then, is that there is a danger of introducing a split test and then forgetting about it. Because if you happen to write an ad that doesn't perform as well and you leave that on rotation, over time, if that ad is not performing as well and you're rotating at 50%, then you're going to denigrate the quality score for the keyword, aren't you? Because you're reducing the average click-through for the ad group.
Yeah, if you were to introduce an ad that didn't perform as well, you would affect the keyword's history negatively. What we also know is that, to some degree, Google sometimes hints at the fact that the last 2 weeks are more important than the whole lifetime of the keyword. So you can usually, reverse things. If you're not, you would have to do something really horrible and have a split test where something's getting no clicks and it's just awful, and the other ad is doing wonderful and perfect, and that's not really in real life how it goes. Usually you see something's a little bit better or significantly better, but still within the same ballpark. So it's unlikely in the real world that you would really introduce something that would be horrible in terms of adding in a lot of negative data to a keyword's history.
Got it. And it's in everybody's best interest that people are constantly split testing so they can find the best ad, so Google wouldn't penalize us too much for that.
Right.
Um,
What you did say though, what you said was right though, Glenn. That if you were to introduce an ad and you weren't monitoring and you had it on, say, rotate, and you let it go for a really long time, you would be hurting yourself. So you're better off. You're always better off maintaining a level of mindfulness of how you want, where your split tests are on your ad copy.
okay. So my takeaway from this so far is get yourself a passable landing page. We're going to go through that in a little bit. And then focus on really improving your click-through rate and relevance.
Yeah. And the next slide here, I have some suggestions. And that's along the lines of what we're thinking too. One thing that I think I just want to convey to people is that CTR is something worth paying attention to in general, and getting an instinct, developing an instinct as to if your CTR is in the ballpark of what's right. So when you have, if you have words that seem like they would have similar, specificity, or is that the right word? That they're about as specific and that they would get clicked on about as much, to see if they're really getting clicked on about that much. For instance, if you had someone looking for a product and they had an actual product ID, I would guess that when they type that in and you have an ad where you're selling that exact product right down to the product ID, you would probably get a high click-through rate, but a very generic term, probably not so much a category term. So you should get a feel for, are your click-through rates looking okay? A lot of times when you're getting more granular and you're splitting things out between Search Network and Google, or across countries or across states, you can actually have ideas of, this word here, roofing quote, does great in Chicago. Why does that not do so good in Minneapolis? And, you can then sort of see what's going on. So kind of keeping mindful of where you could be possibly. So that sounds pretty generic, maybe a little bit general, but if we want to get more specific on how to, elevate situations that you're spotting as bad, one thing that we say is what we just talked about. You have to diligently split test your ad copy, because usually the ad that's going to win will have the better CTR. If you set it to optimize, Google will always pick the ad that has the better CTR. Now, anyone who follows these webinars or audios knows that we don't use CTR when we judge ads. We use profit per impression, and that may not equate to the better CTR winning, but still, as a rule, generally the best profit you get per impression will normally come more often than not from the ad that has the better click-through rate also.
You can calculate profit per impression at supersplittester.com. It's all done for you.
Excellent.
So what we're saying so far is really the importance of peeling and sticking, running the search query report to see how, if you're running broad matches and phrase matches, to see how Google is actually expanding using fuzzy logic and how those expansions to different keywords are actually performing. And when you see words that might have a higher click-through rate, you pull them out and write a more specific ad so you can boost your click-through rate. And when they're not performing, you take them out with negatives. Got it.
Yeah. So here's some of the other specific things that are right along those lines. Theming out ad groups logically so that you can write ad copy that's relevant to the keywords that